Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Inenco's Energy News Update. With the election still looking too close to call, this week we're focusing on the issue of how we are planning for our future energy security. The Institute of Directors has set out a demand for all the parties to demonstrate that they understand the requirements of businesses in the run-up to the election. It identified the UK's energy infrastructure as one of the critical issues that would need to be addressed by whatever shade of government takes power after May the 6th. We're joined today by Melanie Smith, a market analyst at Inenco. Melanie, why would the IOD see our energy infrastructure as a critical issue?
Businesses need to plan ahead, and when you look forward, even just a few years, there are real concerns about our energy supplies, particularly electricity.
Is this the generation gap that we've heard about?
Yes, that's part of the issue, but it's a wider problem. The distribution networks need to be redesigned, especially if we're going to be able to bring the amount of renewable energy we need.
Do the parties have clear plans to address the issues?
Every party has a wealth of proposals on energy and the environment, looking at renewable generation, smart networks, carbon reduction and the generation mix. What's less clear is where the investment, the £200 billion before 2020, is going to come from.
These concerns over the generation gap have been highlighted by recent developments around one of the plants scheduled to close in 2015. Melanie, what's going on?
This is about the coal-fired plant at Katey near Edinburgh. It's used mostly to back up supplies when demand is high using locally mined coal. Because it's an old plant, the owners, Scottish Power, decided not to fit the emissions reduction equipment needed for it to keep running. The questions, though, are about what happens when it closes.
What are the plans?
Well, Scottish Power wants to build a new gas-fired power station to replace the coal plant, bringing the gas in through a new 17-kilometre pipeline. But both the local council and now the district council have both rejected the plans, even though the planning officers have recommended it should be approved.
Do we know why it was turned down?
There seems to be a number of reasons. Concerns have been expressed about emissions on local populations.
Is this a risk to energy security?
It's hard to say that on its own this plant is a risk to energy security, but if this approach is followed elsewhere, then it becomes worrying. We're going to need something like gas-fired generation to back up the renewables, and this plant seems ideally placed.
A new report from PricewaterhouseCoopers, along with 2 European research organisations, has outlined a plan to meet the entire energy needs for Europe from renewable sources. Melanie, this sounds pretty ambitious. How do they say that it can be done?
It's a huge project. Imagine linking up all the large offshore and onshore wind projects around Europe with a huge smart grid. Then add a massive increase of hydroelectric plants in the Alps and Scandinavia and a linkage to another supergrid in North Africa connecting to solar generation.
Is that a realistic idea?
It's all possible in principle, but no one should underestimate the scale of the task. It would require unprecedented level of cooperation between countries, as well as the full support from the construction, engineering and oil industries.
That's a pretty big task. Are there any signs that this approach will be adopted?
There's a lot of discussion about building some form of offshore supergrid to link mainland Europe and the UK. This could form the start of the project. At this stage, though, the question is whether the political agreements can be reached, especially on how it will be funded.
Thanks, Melanie. That's all that we have time for this week, so for now, from Melanie and myself, thank you for watching and goodbye.